Hello, my name is Happiness. I am 24 years old and I stayed far from the church for 1 year. And pretty soon you're going to understand why. I came from a broken family, completely destroyed. There was a lot of fights in the house, and I remember that it was really rare to have peace at home. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was molested by a very close family member. He molested me and my sister at the same time. And as I started to grow older, emptiness started to grow inside of me as well. Today I know that it was a deep depression, but at the time I tried to fill that void with different things. When I was around 13, 14 years old, I started to wear tight clothing, revealing clothes. I started to hang out with the wrong crowd. I even started to go to parties. They offered me alcohol, cigarettes even, and I started messing around with boys as well. All of this I tried to do. I tried to fill the void with all of these things. And it was around this time that my mother received an invitation to come to the Universal Church. And when I stepped into the church, I thought that it was going to just be one more church, to be honest. I thought it was going to just be one more church to put on the list of churches, because we used to go to a lot of churches. The only thing is, this church was different. I remember the pastor, one night he preached about the Holy Spirit. He said that only the Holy Spirit can fill the emptiness that a person has inside. And that night I said, wow, I need this Holy Spirit. If He can get rid of this emptiness that I feel every single day, then I want Him. And it was then that I decided to truly give my life to God. I started to go to the church more. I started to read my Bible. I stopped hanging around the bad crowd. I stopped messing around with boys, going to parties, using those tight clothes. All of those things that I did in the past to fill that emptiness, I cut it off completely. It was a radical decision. It didn't take long for me to make that decision. And I remember one Sunday morning, we were in the church and the pastor called everyone who wanted to seek the Holy Spirit. He said, come to the front of the altar. And something inside of me said, Happiness, today is the day. And I remember I went before the altar and I was seeking the Holy Spirit with all my strength. And that day I did receive the baptism in the Holy Spirit. And afterwards, something inside of me changed. It was as if my vision, my outlook on life changed. If I saw someone on the street or in my school, I didn't just see them as a regular person anymore. I started to see them as if they were a soul. I knew I had to share. Inside of me, it was burning to share what happened with me, to share with people that God is real and that He does live inside of us when we seek for Him. And the desire to save souls was burning inside of me. I started to evangelize more because the desire to serve God was so strong that I couldn't keep it to myself. I couldn't hold it in. I had to save souls. And it was a few months after I received the Holy Spirit that things started to get worse in my family, especially with my father. He was going to the church. All of my family were going to the church, and my entire family left. Only I remained in the faith. And when I said in the beginning that I stayed 1 year out of the church, it was precisely for this reason. It wasn't my own decision. I was forced to leave. My father took me out of the church by force. I remember one day I went to the church and it didn't even pass 3 minutes. I sat down in the chair, and 3 minutes later the pastor comes and says, "Happiness, your dad is outside." He followed me that day, and he demanded that I leave the church and go with him that night. I thought that he was going to take me home, but he actually wanted to drive me to another church. When I said that I didn't want to go, he started to hit me in the car. A few months passed, and I still kept contact with the people in the church, the pastors, the assistants. And one day he found out, and that day he grabbed me by the neck like this, choked me. He took my phone, threw it on the floor, and it broke into pieces. And that day he forced me again to go to another church. And when I said, "Please, Dad, I don't want to go," he started beating me again that day. There was another occasion. It was a Wednesday night. I got home, and the custom is when you get home, you greet your parents. So when I got home that night, I went to his room to greet him, and without saying a word, he got out of his chair and hit me on this side of my face. It hurt physically, it did, but inside of me, the Holy Spirit, he gave me peace, because he said, "I'm with you." Another occasion happened where I was in school. At the time when all of this was happening, I was an assistant. And my father, without me knowing, he went into my room and he took all of the books that I had from the church, the books of Bishop Macedo, the books of faith that I had. He took as well the shirts that I had from the groups. He also took my Bibles that day. He took my Bibles and also my uniform, my assistant's uniform. I don't know if he burned it, if he ripped it up. All I know is he threw it away. I know at the time that it was the devil using him. But at this point, I had no contact with anyone in the church. I had one Bible that I had to hide inside of my school. I couldn't even read it at home because I was afraid that he was going to take it. So at that point, I was alone, and it was really hard. But the Holy Spirit opened up a door for me, because it was at that time that Bishop Macedo started to place the services that he did in Brazil on the internet, the full service. And I saw that as a way of the Holy Spirit taking care of me. But at the time, I didn't understand Portuguese. It was a different language. I didn't understand it. So it was one more battle, one more challenge for me to overcome at that time. But thank God, the Holy Spirit started to help me understand little by little the bishop, and I started getting phrases here, some words there, putting it together until a few months passed, and I was understanding the entire service. When it was time to seek for the Holy Spirit, I would seek the Holy Spirit in Portuguese, something that I never imagined that I would do. And when it was time to, take part in the Lord's Supper, I would get my bread, my grape juice, and I would take part. I turned that little room in my mind, it turned into a church. I would watch the program and imagine myself being there, seated in the first row, listening to the bishop. I made that little place as if it was an altar to God, because I couldn't physically go to the church. And day after day, listening to the messages of faith, my faith was getting stronger day by day. And the Holy Spirit, He never left me alone. After that time had passed, that year had passed, where the devil saw that he couldn't use my father against me anymore, I was able to physically return to the church. Thank God, today my life is completely different. I am married, happily married, serving God on the altar. My relationship today with my family is different, it's blessed. I thank God in first place because He never left my side. He chose me out of all of my brothers and sisters. He chose me. I also thank the Universal Church because they always had that open door for me when I needed it the most. I thank as well Bishop Macedo, even though he doesn't know me. He was used by God, by the Holy Spirit, to save me in those moments, those difficult moments that I went through. And today I know that the challenges can come, the problems can come, anything can come. But because I have the Holy Spirit, I have the assurance inside of me that I will overcome. Thank God.